right, good afternoon, everyone who's present here today, the parents and the students. So, have you ever got into a situation where you can't help but to ruminate over the negative outcome of a situation? Well, that is called pessimism. So, that is what I'm going to be talking today, which is pessimism, but specifically in middle school students. So, next slide, please. So, this is going to be the next slide. This is going to be the background of my research about pessimism. It's from a study that I found in Indonesia, in Malang, and it shows these concerning numbers, which shows that 60% of the students in a certain middle school in Malang show some risk of having depression due to pessimism, and 50% of the students are pessimistic. So that is going to be the background of research for my presentation. So I intend to find the cause and the consequences, as well as trying to find the solution for this whole issue. So without further ado, let's just move on to the causes. So first, the reason why someone can be overly pessimistic is because genes. So genes do in fact play in whether someone's going to be more pessimistic or optimistic, since 20 up to 36% of an individual's genes can affect whether that person is going to be more optimistic or pessimistic. So next slide, please. All right, so the second cause is basically traumatic experiences or an ongoing mental illness. This is because having a pessimistic mindset is actually the symptom of people who have depression, anxiety, and some other mental illness. And usually people who have encountered traumatic experiences, they have a more pessimistic way of thinking than other people. So let's move on to the next part of the presentation, which is the consequences. So if you continue to be overly pessimistic for a very long time, it will eventually cause some health problems. This is shown by a study which shows that up to 35% of optimistic people have a reduced risk of encountering heart problems, while pessimistic people, they have a higher risk of encountering heart problems. Next slide. The next consequence is stress. And this stress, if it's prolonged for a very long time, it can eventually lead to mental illness. This is because people who are super stressed for a very long period of time will have high cortisol levels in their brain. And it can eventually lead to mental illness, since a study showed that people who just got diagnosed by depression, they have a very high cortisol level in their brain. Next slide. And the third consequence that I'm going to include here in my presentation is it can worsen mental illness. All right, next slide. So now that we've talked about the consequences, we're now going to talk about the solution. So although there are actually lots of solutions on the internet, which you can browse it right now, but I'm going to just mention one in this presentation, which is, next slide please, implementing a healthy lifestyle by exercising. So as you can see here, the data from the study, it shows that exercising can actually help to improve our mental health and to reframe our mindset. This is because when we exercise, our brain will release chemicals like endorphins and serotonin, which will improve our mood. And it can also improve our mental health, which helps us to cope with stress and also help us to reframe the way we think so that we can be a little bit more optimistic. Next slide. So in conclusion, although pessimism can lead to lots of various complications, I would suggest all of you here to at least be a little pessimistic. Not overly pessimistic, but a little pessimistic. Why? It's because we have to balance being pessimistic and being optimistic so that we can both consider the negative and the positive outcomes of a situation. So that is it from my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. God bless you.